Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay this afternoon. I had to take a small break. My wife came in and was like, the dog, he's not feeling well. And I could tell that she was somewhat freaked out by the whole thing. And when I go out, I became somewhat freaked out by the whole thing because my dog has a huge spot on him. Um, we're going to keep an eye on him. Gave him a Benadryl. If it gets worse, we'll take him to the vet. But between then and now, let's do the news. And in this case, it's not really the news, just an outright opinion. Donald Trump is supposedly going to float a name for the Supreme Court pick today. And, of course, Mitch McConnell, ignoring the fact that Mitch McConnell said that there was a Mitch McConnell rule in the last time something like this came up, is now going to work assiduously towards getting that person nominated. I am not a Democrat, but regardless of whether I'm not a Democrat or not, there are certain issues that I don't necessarily want broken. In which case, I recognize that the resistance here, frayed as it is, weakened, kind of broken as it is, there are going to be certain cases that come up, one of which, Roe versus Wade, potentially, which could potentially take us back to the Dark Ages, at least from the standpoint of a civilized country. It's not the point that women's reproductive health is everything. It's the point that I consider all of these issues to be some degree equal. I don't want women to be put in that situation of having backyard, with what are those things called? Clothes hangers or backyard abortions. We're a civilized country, supposedly, or at the very least, we've reached that bar, or at least I thought we did. But it's a little bit more fundamental than that. Take a look at this. Look at this dejected misanthrope. Don't go to commercial. Don't go to commercial. Don't go to commercial. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's try it one more time. Come on.
Introducing IT that gives you the best of both worlds.
All right, we'll come back to that. That's Doug Jones. Doug Jones got elected in Alabama by a larger African-American population that, for whatever reason, celebrated that he barely beat a pedophile. Listen to Doug Jones. Now, understand, get the context. The context is important. Barack Obama, whatever you want to think of him, Barack Obama was in office for 8 years. During the last term of office, Scalia dropped dead. When Scalia dropped dead, the brightness of the planet ticked up just a degree as he hit hell and broke it wide open. Secondary to that process, Obama, President of the United States, gets to determine a Supreme Court pick. It is up to the to the Senate to confirm that pick and even table that pick, meaning we're going to bring that person up for a vote. Merrick Garland was the Forrest Gump of Supreme Court picks. He has the charisma of a wet condom for all intents and purposes. Obama picked him because he thought there's no way anybody could ever deny this guy. He's just, he's even a Republican guy. He was wrong. They did deny him. And Democrats, thinking, we can use this to attack Republicans with, burnt out. It didn't work. It didn't work. Not only did you not get your Supreme Court pick, not only did you not get a Democratic president, Donald Trump now, and Mitch McConnell, has stripped the filibuster away from you, something that Harry Reid didn't necessarily want to do. And now, he's going to try to ram these Supreme Court picks down your throat despite Mitch McConnell not bringing your pick up. That breaks all sorts of precedent. Now, you as a Democrat, what do? They've raided your village. They've pillaged. They've had your women in bad straits. What are you going to do now that you're about to take their town back? Let's hear Doug Jones talk about what he's going to do in response to Republicans essentially eating Democrats' lunch.
For whomever the president nominates.
Oh, I'm open to voting yes. I'm open to voting no. I mean, we don't know who this nominee is going to be yet. I don't think my role is a rubber stamp for the president, but it's also not an automatic knee-jerk no either. My job is to exercise that independent voice. I want to look for a judge that has the intellect and capacity to do the right thing, to follow the rule of law, to adhere to precedents, and move the country forward. And I think that that's the best role.
Just to put some context around this, Neil Gorsuch, the president's first nominee for the Supreme Court, got 3 Democratic votes. You weren't in the Senate then, but you come from a more Republican state than those Democratic senators. Hard to imagine you voting no. Fair?
Well, no, I don't think that that's fair one way or another, Dana. I think that I've got to look at this nominee. I'm going to make an independent judgment. That's my job. I come from a place with a former senator and Howell Heflin, former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. He understood the role of the Senate as with that shared responsibility. And I'm going to make an independent judgment and a view. I don't think anyone should expect me to simply vote yes for this a nominee, just simply because my state may be more conservative than others.
How sad. How sad. How utterly pathetic. They pillage your village. Utterly pillage your village. They take all your women, and if you want to say these people who are pillaging the village were burly women, then they've taken all of your men. Whatever you want to say. They've pillaged your village. And the best that you can come up with is Alabama Doug Jones, who's wishy-washy and have no idea what he's going to do. I don't like people who are moderates. I don't like people who don't know what they're going to be or don't know what they're going to do. They've stolen your Supreme Court pick. You should be willing to slit your wrist on a Senate floor if it stops them from getting that pick through. None of this wishy-washy nonsense. Look, the simple reason that I made this video is a simple point. Stop acting like the Supreme Court is an impartial actor. Stop acting like the people who are being selected for the Supreme Court are somehow impartial and fair and just looking at the law. Nonsense! Nonsense! They're political actors. It's a political court. The whole reason that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party fight so hard, even use that as this thing of remember the court, remember the court, remember the court when they're arguing about their votes, is because they understand it's a political actor. It's used as this goalie of sorts, but it's a goalie for people who are already, again, political actors. You might as well just put a Republican and a Democrat on the stand. You get the same verdicts. Let's be honest. My point is saying that is acknowledging that allows you to attack the Supreme Court. You need to do 2 things. If you're going to be a Democrat, if you're going to be earnest and represent your base, and represent the people who, for whatever reason, still find themselves residing in the party. You willing to bleed on the Senate in order to prevent that Supreme Court pick from going through, seeing as if they already stole your pick. So wishy-washy people like this is problematic at best. But beyond that point, you should be willing to attack the Supreme Court. You are a legislative body. If you get in power, again, if you get the levels that you had under the Obama administration, again, you need to look at the Supreme Court as a political actor, and the rules and the laws that you pass need to take into account that the Supreme Court is a political actor. If that means screwing around with the Supreme Court, like adding, forcing them to be elected, forcing them to run in races, I don't care what it is. Attack the Supreme Court. They're not your friend. And at this point, if Trump gets his Latvian hooker into the Supreme Court, whoever that is, you're going to be down on another seat by somebody who's nothing like Justice Kennedy. You're talking about another Scalia replacing Roberts, who's already to the far right. Doug Jones' response in this was rather embarrassing as a man, let alone as a Democrat, let alone as somebody who's supposed to be representing a particular constituency. You barely beat a pedophile. And this wishy-washy response goes into why you probably barely just beat a pedophile. the other senators like Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, all of these people in these Republican districts, they stole your seat. Does that dig into you at all? Is this an uncomfortable vote at all? Does it bother you that they literally stole your president's seat? It should. It should. And now we're going to pretend as if he's putting up somebody that in any way is going to be looking at the law, as if he's just going to be piecing away at the law. Like, I'm struggling over this, and I'm not sure, so I'm going to go to bed. And no, they're not piecing away at the law. They're not figuring the law out. They can vote. You can almost figure out what the vote is just by knowing who put the person on the Supreme Court bench. That gets across this idea that the vote is a can response. It's not them looking at the law. They're molding the law as they go about their affairs. It needs to be looked at as a political actor. So people like Doug Jones, Joe Manchin, these people are going to vote for it, yes. They're going to vote for it, yes. But come on. Like, I'm trying to dig home into this thing of whatever is in you that digs in you enough to says, you know what? The Republican Party is not necessarily playing as if there's a societal need in this process. Meaning they're playing in this process for keeps. And if we're not willing to do the same, then what are we here for? If we find out that Russia has a nuclear weapon in space, guess what? America is going to put a nuclear weapon in space. If we find out that there's a Navy ship being built that has some kind of super ability that we didn't think of, we're going to build a ship with a super ability that we didn't think of. But for whatever reason, when the Republican Party just outright steals a Supreme Court pick from the Democratic Party shrugs. The slow kid that get his lunch money taken shrugs. Give me your watch. Shrugs. They just shrug. There should be no accepting of any of this. I understand you don't have the votes. But the idea that anybody would go along with this is sad. It's utterly sad. Let's see. Let's see who's here. I just... Doug Jones is embarrassing. Doug Jones is utterly embarrassing. That's so... I mean, come on, man. They're going to be on that seat for like 20, 30 years. 20, 30 years, potentially. Bob Ramirez steals the seat. What are you saying, Jamal? Russia, Bob Ramirez. No, Bob, I'm not saying Russia, and you know what I'm talking about. They didn't let Obama put his seat in. And yeah, the Democrats were weak. They were, feckless in regards to trying to emphatically get his seat over the hump. But for all intents and purposes, Mitch McConnell didn't call up his person. And at the very least, just from the standpoint of protocol, decorum, you call up the presidency, even if you don't like him. It's kind of besides the point. The edifice that is government requires certain processes to take place. And if those processes don't take place, then what do you got? And by the way, one last point. Democrats should be willing to let the Supreme Court die on the vine. I wasn't the one that came up with that. Republicans came up with that. So I agree with them. Let it die on the vine. Let it wither on the vine. If we're playing this game where the only team that gets a Supreme Court seat is a team that's in the presidency and in the House and the Senate, fair enough. Then that's where we're playing. I'm making a point to you that the moment that the other team ups it a notch, and you just let them up it a notch without a consequence, the United States has developed nuclear weapons, and everybody else around the world shrugs. China has put a weapon in space, and the rest of the world shrugs. Nobody, it would be unconscionable. But if you were the Democratic Party, Danny Knapp, Democrats could have blocked Clarence Thomas too. Dennis DeCinti let him pass committee, and many Democrats voted to confirm. Democrats are full of shit and have vote Democrat because SCOTUS is bullshit. You know what's wild about that? At the time, though, the decorum was, look, we're going to be fair. If we're a Democrat, we're going to, raise them up because that's the prerogative of the president. That's not the era that we're in. Republicans jumped the shark on that era when they refused to even bring up Obama's pick for a vote. And there was no consequence. The idea that you would let them get away with that is stunning. It's stunning. It's stunning. It's stunning. And Doug Jones sitting here, embarrassing. Utterly embarrassing. Purses go, yes, because conservatives who are not neoconservatives understand that making something illegal doesn't stop it from happening. Yes, so you might as well have it in daylight once the only neocons agree. Yes, making something illegal doesn't stop it from happening. Yes, I agree. And I even said that. There's no such thing as world law or the United Nations world law. Thomas is one of the worst justices of all time. Yes, he is. I agree with that. Let someone shame you for voting with your conscience. If we all did it, wouldn't be in this mess. If we all did, we wouldn't be in this mess. Agreed. Tim Flobuck, I only wish I could give them more power over my life. I think you're being I think you're joking. Let's see. Somebody's from Germany. William Walters, Germany here, but I'm in America. Oh, well, welcome, Williams. Welcome, Williams. Do you have an expat health insurance in Germany? Is it good? How much do you pay? That's hilarious. I may have to know that myself at one point. And Wesley, about noon here. Yeah, it's about noon here too, Wesley. In fact, it is noon here. I disagree with doing away with the Supreme Court and the Electoral College. They both serve a valuable role in the balance of power. Pat, I'm not really talking about doing away with it. I'm talking about more so understanding and accepting it's a political tool. It's a political animal. It's not this impartial actor. We know who's going to be, what the vote of the person who's going to be on the Supreme Court based on the person who the Trump chooses, or Obama chooses, or Reagan chooses, or Clinton chooses, or Bush chooses. I made a point, they're political actors. Let's get away with this nonsense and pretending as if the Supreme Court is this unbiased thing that's above all. It's not. It's not. If a Republican is in office, Republicans under Democrats have said, let's let this wither on the vine. I'm saying, I agree with them. Under the current rule set, where Donald Trump is going to be the one selecting who's going to be on the Supreme Court, let it wither on the vine. If you get someone who's more amenable, well, bring it on. I didn't set that rule set, though. The Republicans set that rule under Obama. I'm just following their rule set. That's all. Honestly, I think Americans need to be broken up in semi-autonomous regions blocks because the same institutional models, but trying to force California to be one state when it clearly can't be. California, what's wrong with California being one state? If you can have one country to be that size, why can't you have one state? I want 13 Supreme Court justices. Whoever decided 9 was going too low. Belinda, Lease, yeah, let's pack the court. Let's pack the court. Oh, look, all I'm saying, I understand, Pat, where it's like, oh, dude, you're talking about taking away the Supreme Court. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that the Supreme Court is a political animal. That's a flat fact. You can, for the most part, tell what they're going to say, meaning the judgment, based on who chose them. Political actors, political leaders wouldn't fight so hard to get to the Supreme Court pick, or wouldn't use that as this kind of vote for us because of the Supreme Court if it wasn't a powerful thing. I'm saying treat it as such. I'm saying stop treating it as if it's this thing that's unbiased and above it all. It's not. It's not. Let's stop pretending. Meaning, if you have the capacity to take Congress, your laws need to take that into account. If that's saying this will not be taken down by the Supreme Court, meaning writing the law in a way that says the Supreme Court cannot challenge the law, whatever needs to be done, if that's packing the court, that's not going to fly, but whatever. I'm just making the point that it needs to be treated as a hostile actor. That's all. Roe versus Wade was made by the conservative court. Well, it's going to be undone by this conservative court. It's going to be undone by this one. So I feel you. I think it's hilarious that the Green Party supporters have been bemoaning that its core constituency, the lower half of 1%, isn't getting a share of the pie. Fail. Oh, Bob, that's low. That's low, Bob. That's low. That's low. Balthazar, Supreme Court rejects of the United States. Scrotus. Oh, that's funny and nasty at the same time. I disagree. Base it on the person. No, I don't think you should stop it as maybe I'm saying this wrong. I don't think you should stop the person as an absolute. But more likely than not, Trump is going to bring on somebody whose knuckles have scars on them because they've been dragged from wherever they came from, out of some kind of swamp. I'm saying that the moment that guy drags his swampy, slimy hands and sits into the Senate for confirmation, you say fail. I don't like that guy. When you find somebody who doesn't have scars on their knuckles, or at least not a huge amount, you give that guy a chance. My thing is, Donald Trump is not going to put anybody up that's sane. He's not going to put up a Merrick Garland. He's going to put up somebody like a Scalia times 25 on some kind of steroids with a bit of coke, smoking a bit of meth. Trump will get 2 more in the next 6 years. You better stop him here. Love the content, Jamal. Keep doing your thing. You're doing Lord's work. Buck the Democrats' spineless, cowardice, rat bastards. Who said this? That's funny. Anthony Reyes. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. And it is spineless. I couldn't imagine that. When they asked Ocasio-Cortez, she says, I want to fight, but I don't know what the leadership wants to do. Don't get weakened by these spineless hacks. These people are jello. Ultimately, you look at them hard, they fall over. And these other people who you're talking about are going to be the resistance. Are you shitting me? They stole your pick. That hack, Gorish, that knuckle dragger, is going to be on the Supreme Court for the next 30 years, providing he doesn't have a heart attack and drop dead in 10 years. You'd be so lucky. But probably not. My mom used to say assholes live forever. Gorish is going to be there probably for 80 years. 100 years old, dragging himself to the Supreme Court, doing shitty law. Mr. Spinks, the Supreme Court is only supposed to determine the constitutionality of laws. That's it. Politicizing the judiciary is the problem. Yes, but that's well, right even there. How do you unpoliticize a judiciary? How do you do that? You have political actors choosing people for the Supreme Court. What do you think you're going to get out of that when you have a political actor choosing somebody for the Supreme Court? It's built into it. The flaw is built into it. Paul Chapman. What's happening, Paul Chapman? Our souls live forever. Yeah, she said it all the time. Assholes live forever. She's like, your dad is going to live forever because that guy's an asshole. Trying to pretend the judiciary isn't political is pointless. Design a system that can handle it. Yes, agreed. Persis go. Agreed. Pat Hacker. Mr. Spinks, that both sides love to do just that. Yeah. Agreed. Pat, I agree. I don't know how you get a non-political judiciary. I don't know how you get a non-political anything, if I'm being honest. I have no idea. The moment that somebody comes up with an opinion that says they want to do X versus Y, you now have a political discussion. Some may be greater than others, but at the end of the day, you have political discussion. If I want to sit here, light up a joint, that's a political thing. Now, it's me and a plant with fire, minding my own business, left to my own devices, under the moonlight, smoking a doobie, listening to Electric Lady Land. And yet, in this beautiful purple haze, I could be dragged away by some brute and thrown into a cage. A woman recently got locked up for dancing in Iran. Apparently a political statement. Anything can be political depending on whether or not somebody else doesn't like it. So, let the people vote on justices and no delegates. See, that was my other thought. Attack the Supreme Court. You want to attack them and piss them off? Make them run for their seats. you can be dragged away and made to do space work for 2 cents. Yeah, right? Anthony Reyes. Actually, I thought it was like 8 cents a day, 8 cents an hour, or some insane stuff. It's like 8 cents plus slavery, or slavery plus 8 cents. Oscar Santana, I know some will say that you can, and that we have the Constitution to look at, but it's an old document, and present society is so different. Look, the Constitution has a capacity to grow and change. The problem is the people don't. Or at the very least, the people do so slowly. So the society comes away with certain things that it needs, and you have certain pressures in the society that keeps it frozen. I would argue that that pressure tends to just be cash. It's, for example, there's a lab that's building an artificial kidney. The kidney is going to be able to take people off of kidney dialysis. You have something that is going to improve the well-being of people 100-fold. You can barely get money for the project. Think about that. Now, if somebody else wanted to build some kind of new video game, they could raise all sorts of capital. Now, the guy is raising money for it, but I'm just kind of making the point of the priority here. Health, well-being should be the priority, but in our society it's not. Money is this kind of hindrance to that. If he wanted to have the research that he needed to do, he needed the cash to be able to do it. The society doesn't necessarily prioritize that stuff. It prioritizes other stuff. So somebody may go into something for fiscal wizardry as opposed to actually helping somebody or having some real relevance. It's us. We're the problem. It's us. The precedent of abortion law isn't Roe versus Wade. It's 1992 Planned Parenthood versus Casey, where women can be made to jump through hoops, just not many. I wouldn't be surprised to see court expand to 11. I would. I mean, you have a Democratic Party that is this weak and ridiculous, and you're expecting them to try to pack the court. FDR tried to pack the court. They call it court packing when he tried to add additional people to the court. I think he tried to up the number. Nobody said that the number had to be 9, so you say, hey, let's add some more justices. People howled at that. Oh my God. Now, the reason he did that is for the same reason that Democrats may want to do it now, because they kept striking down his legislation for the New Deal. I have no confidence in this party to affect any level of resistance. Zero. I have no confidence in this party to affect any level of resistance from the standpoint of the laws that are coming down or the Supreme Court or any of this stuff. I have zero confidence in this. So, we'll see, but I'd be shocked as shit. I think you might get a speech or two on the, in the Senate. But beyond that, they're going to roll over, bow their heads, lift their arms, spread their cheeks. The Democrats are going to let in whatever crazy person Trump appoints. There'll be a tiny bit of theater from whoever they're running in 2020, and then they'll vote for him. Yes, that's what I think. Exactly. Video game vision quest. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. There are going to be certain people that they're going to allow to vote. Here's the thing. They're going to make a gross calculus. They're going to say, look, it is demoralizing to have to vote for this knuckle dragger. It is. The guy breathes through his mouth. Look at his knuckles. He drags them all over the place. This guy's a goblin. But, some of you are in vulnerable districts. And because some of you are in vulnerable states. And because some of you are in vulnerable areas, we're going to let you make that vote for Trump. His pick. It's going to be gross, but you're going to make it. Now, those people are going to make that vote anyway because they were terrified. And the other Democrats are going to vote against it. That's what I think is going to happen. Doug Jones saying, don't take my vote as a given. I don't take your vote as a given. I look at it as some of the Democrats are going to allow themselves to vote. Now, the reason why they're going to do this is because they're going to estimate that their chances of winning is better, meaning the chance of winning the Senate is better if they do this. Meaning, taking the gross vote, they believe they have a better chance of keeping the Senate. That's what they think, anyway. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's what they think. So Joe Manchin, Tester, they believe that they have to make that vote. I think this just sucks. It's gross. I do agree with that, though, JT. We saw them roll over the Republican stop Garland on Supreme Court. Yeah. I mean, I know they assumed Hillary Clinton was going to win that race. I get it. But why do you assume that? Like, why do you assume something in the future is going to happen as if you have godlike precision in regard to your understanding of the world? This is a political game space. You should have fought like hell for every yard. And I think this is somewhat of the problem. When Chuck Todd asked Ocasio, was like, hey, are you going to take on Republican tactics? She should have said yes. She should have said yes. And she should explain that this idea of escalation at the moment that your enemy does something, you to some degree have to do it in order to act as a bulwark against what they're doing. Democrats didn't start it on this one. This was Republicans. There's no left-wing and right-wing judges. They're judges who look at facts. I can't think of one example of a judge doing something based on their political or religious views. Oh, God, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I would say pretty much all of Thomas's rulings and all of Scalia's rulings. Anthony Reyes, you absolutely don't understand the Republican mindset. It's not about caring. It's about not wanting interference in our lives, but our government. That's nonsense. I'm sorry, dude. Look, I understand that the Republicans at one point may have wanted that, meaning the people on the ground. That has been magnificently hijacked by people who, for the most part, just want capital to do whatever capital wants. When they're talking about freedom, they're not talking about you. They're talking about people who, for the most part, are part of the 1%. And they want that freedom to essentially do whatever they will without regulation, without anything else that would intruding upon that, whether that be taxes or regulation getting in their way. The problem with that is there's nothing that they can do as a 1%er that is not going to adversely affect somebody else. The air that you pollute is the air that I breathe. The water that you pollute is the water that I drink. And the idea that other people shouldn't get a say in it is nonsense. Oftentimes, what they're fighting for is their own. They've conned a certain number of Republicans in order to vote for stuff that is against their own self-interest. This is not, whether that's the Republican or mindset, you guys are being magnificently used as useful idiots, if that's true. I thought the same in my country, but I noticed they judge different people, corporations differently. Yeah, they do. They do. Clearly, they do. It's not the same. Democrats have no balls. Obama and Democrats are paid to shrug. See, here's the thing. I don't know if they're paid to shrug. I think what happens is two things. One or two things. You may be right. I think what happens is they get into this process of, okay, our party believes that we need to be X, meaning we need to be a lefty party. Great. The people who we're paid by don't. Unfortunate. So who do we listen to? The people that we're paid by or the people who we need to vote for us? And you end up with a moderate. You end up with somebody who's paid, who talks a particular way, but does something else. So you get like Obamacare, who does incremental change around the edges because they believe nothing can take place from the standpoint of a real substantive change in things. But the reason they're moderates is not necessarily because they're overtly paid to be moderates, if that makes sense. Like, they're not overtly paid to lose. They take this idea of, this is where we are. We're moderates. We can take money and we can give a particular political opinion. The world is great. And that's what they've gone by. You know, Obama gave an amazing speech. What does he do? He sounds like Bernie Sanders, but what does he do? I'm just making this point that there is a difference in how they sound versus what they do. And that difference is this idea of, we're paid to do X, but we talk like Y because we need the votes of those people. The moderates. If they decided to be a little bit more left-wing, they would lose support of their backers. If they decided to be more right-wing, they would lose the support of the people who are in the party. They need the incrementalism, otherwise they wouldn't get any votes from the people who are on the left. And once you get a period of time where people can get accustomed to a particular way of things, then they think that that level of living is normal. Not realizing that there are other worlds, like other places around the globe, that have much better living standards and don't make anywhere near the amount of money that the United States is coming into it. I'm just making the point that your world can be better. It's a choice. All right, I'm going to end this because I have another one after this one also. Moderate is a lazy way of saying I'm not taking a position on anything. Well, no, the funny part is they take a position. They do take a position. They're just wishy-washy about the way they explain the position that they're taking. And they would try to code it in these humanitarian terms and all this other stuff. But usually, often, it's to the right. It's to the right. All right, I'm going to end this because my signal is going in and out. And I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. So hopefully, it'll be okay in the very next video. But I'm going to end this here. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And, of course, you guys can always support through Patreon.